But yeah, and it's interesting to see how it evolved, like especially when they went into the 70s and the kinds of things that they're, kind of concerned about. It reminded me a lot of it's directed by Philip Kaufman, by the way, everybody. It reminded me a lot of Cronenberg movies. Even though this is kind of predates, it reminded me a lot of The Brood, actually, because of what it's about. Because of the pop psychology stuff. Like, I was so surprised because you had brought up before, like how there is a little bit of a class subtext in the movie, where you kind of find that the pod people are kind of like elitist snobs, essentially.
Yeah.
What they kind of covet in terms of who they want to take over are like the brilliant people. And then you have our hero played by the wonderful Donald Sutherland. I love Donald Sutherland in the 70s. Who doesn't like Donald Sutherland in the 70s?
He's got the bushy Jufro and everything,
Yeah, actually he got a perm just for the role.
Right.
He's a civil servant. He works for the city. He's a working class man. He's blue collar. He goes out to these places. He's taking his stuff for dry cleaning, man. Arguing with the Chinese lady. Like, he's salt of the earth, man of the people. He doesn't really, and he kind of floats in between these worlds, and he kind of knows some of these snobby, elitist people.
Sean, that not my wife. That not my wife.
It's a great, dude. Actually, I would say the 78 one, just to throw it out there, is my favorite of the four. Yep. Kind of by a lot, actually.
Yeah.
And I only liked it more upon rewatching it for this. I really, really enjoyed it. Like I said, how these movies are kind of tied to the times that they're made. In the 50s, the original, that's like B sci-fi movies. This is the 70s paranoid thriller. And it's a perfect piece of material to kind of to utilize that for. Because a lot of these movies were kind of out there. A lot of these kind of thrillers, like, shadow governments and things like, the Warren Beatty movie, The China Syndrome with Michael Douglas.
Oh,
we're really doing awful tonight.
Sorry, everybody.
Not the Hudsucker Proxy. It's like, you know what I'm talking about. The thriller. Tremlick says, I know him as the bad guy in UHF. Yeah, me too. Yeah, he was great in that. I agree. But anyways, it has that kind of sense about it, and it slots really well into that time.
Disclosure? Is that the movie you're thinking of?
No, it's not Disclosure. I cannot believe I can't fucking remember this. Now I'm looking. Now you got me looking, dude. Oh, The Parallax View. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Jesus fucking Christ. Anyways, The Parallax View.
We got to cut the show here. We're done.
Yeah, we're done. Actually, guys, we've shamed ourselves greatly.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, The Parallax View. So, kind of, I think the temperature out there in terms of the movie-going populace was definitely primed for this kind of movie. And I was kind of shocked at how it was backing, like, working class people. But I guess I shouldn't, though, because that's the time. That's the rise of unions. That's the rise of kind of populist, like, workers' rights and feminism and all these kinds of things.
Yeah,
kind of fighting...
Post-hippie movement and things like that.
Yeah, post-hippie movement. Fighting back against the establishment, which the intelligentsia is also part of. So I thought that was kind of an interesting way for this movie subtext, because it kind of ignores, it doesn't really get into the idea of it being about communism or subversiveness in that kind of way. It's just kind of commenting on the arrogance of the intellectual community. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, what's his name? Leonard Nimoy's character, Dr. Kibner, who's like a pop psychologist guy. Mm-hmm. He's so dismissive of it. He doesn't believe it. There's got to be something rational. Something has to be able to explain this. Like, no, this is a deep psychosis because you're unhappy in your marriage. That's why you think your husband isn't who he is, etc. Right?
Right.
And he becomes obviously like kind of the perfect proto pod person before he's even a pod person.
Yes.
I mean, when he's a pod person, he's the one that gets to deliver the villain speech, which actually does really good. Leonard Nimoy is really good in this, by the way. But
Well,
but yeah.
yeah.
But I was just kind of surprised how hard in the paint it went against that, because it's so against like the kind of the current sentiment of these things.
Yeah, well, it's that whole post-nuclear family sort of dynamic and idea that it's pushing to. I mean, this is like the rise of divorce rates, families starting to not be forming as on
Yeah.
such a high rate, and that continues going forward. Of course, I mean, you even break it down with like Brooke Adams' character. I mean, she's flirting and hanging out with Donald Sutherland when she's already got a guy friend here, and it's just like they're all kind of bouncing around, at this point.
Yeah, there's a lot of loosey goosey, like
Right.
It kind of come back around. Like it's an Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It's like a middle-aged person's like last dying gasp of like the sexual revolution. It's
Yeah.
like Philip Kaufman's last gasp as like a cool hip guy.
Yeah.
To kind of inject some of that stuff into there. But I kind of like that it also creates a weird tension in the movie as well. And it also kind of helps to underline the subtext about trust and about what are a person's intentions, etc. Trembling says the Parallax View, Capricorn 1, All the President's Men, and 3 Days of the Condor. Lots of great paranoid movies in the 70s. Yes, thank you. I was thinking of all of those and I couldn't come up with a single fucking name.
I was thinking of 3 Days of the Condor actually recently too. I watched that recently a couple of years ago on a plane, and the same kind of vibes, definitely.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one in a long time. Another aspect I liked about this too, because it went back to the source material, because this one is much more into the kind of organic nature of the pod people and the pods themselves, and how this is like a spore from outer space. It's much more explicit. It kind of gets into that. It actually kind of reminded me, the beginning of it, a little bit reminded me of The Happening.
Yeah, a little bit.
I was like, oh, this is kind of got The Happening vibes. The Happening could kind of be adjacent to Invasion of the Body Snatchers kind of movie, I suppose. But I like that. I like that it kind of it got into the grossness, which is, I guess, where the Cronenberg thoughts kind of came in, like kind of the icky nature of the pods and being replicated. I thought that stuff was really cool. There's some really fun effects. Even the dog face was fun. Come on.
Oh yeah, there's some great like body horror throughout this film, and it's not done in like the most explicit way or in a way where it feels like it's completely in your face, but it just feels almost like in a weird way too real. Like I could see this happening in a weird realm if we were getting invaded in this like fashion.
Sure,
this could happen. Like you would have like little, and this kind of like spreads to the other two.
It is happening, Jerry. It literally is happening, except we just can't see the pods.
Yes, yeah. But yeah, like even like what we're seeing right now, the way they extend like the streams and the shreds of like web that like protrude somebody's face,
it makes it spooky. It's like eerie.
Yeah,
it adds something to it, because like
the skin is like decaying.
Like the organic nature to it, right? Like it is of something natural. In a weird way, it makes a case for itself, like ethically, about being like, no, this is just like the next evolution, because it's coming from like this natural organic place, which is kind of essentially is what the argument the pod people make. That's basically what they say.
You could even lump it into like the nature revenge like genre, whereas like nature is really just fighting back and it is like tearing down humanity and like reforming them. It's kind of incredible in that way.
Yeah. Trembling says, even this early Goldblum had to be half naked. Yes, he did. You got to show off that bod,
Yeah.
Was this before or after? This was after Death Wish, isn't it?
Yes, it was after. Death Wish was like 74?
I think 74. Yeah, 78.
Yeah.
Leonard Nimoy. There's some great moments in this movie. It is a great classic, like 70s paranoid thriller. Mm-hmm. And it's also like a good adaptation of the material, and I kind of like his perspective. I like that it's kind of on the side of the regular Joe, explicitly.
Right.
I just honestly, for some reason, I was just like, I didn't remember that about the movie, and it really struck me. And I guess that just directly relates to the current moment we're in life, modernity. But it really struck me. I was like, oh, it's so nice it's so refreshing to watch something where somebody's not a complete fucking moron and is like a regular dude. Regular dudes can save the day too. Okay.
I was revisiting. I know a classic staple of all of our Ghost of the movies, and even like Flea Pit. James Rolfe's old reviews of a lot of these like alien invasion classics, and when he talks about invasion, his main thing is that he doesn't like that the 78 Kaufman film is so fixated on the group, or at least the small group, like whereas almost like nobody has like a firm identity, where like he prefers the original because it's just the individual,
which is the point of the story.
Yeah. But I don't mind that here because it slowly picks off everybody like one by one, and you don't actually, when you first watch it, you really don't know for sure.
Yeah, it's got like a murder mystery structure to it. Yeah, where they kind of they fall one after another until it's just the two of them, and then just somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's a valid point, though. I think it's a valid critique if you're considering the original, like the source material and what it's like the subtext of that is.
Of course.
But I think just in the 78 version, in defense of it, it just kind of did its own thing. It changed It changed it. And it also was just kind of, I think, appealing to the filmmaking of the era in the same way that the 56 version was,
Yeah.
Like it's got like the horror slasher kind of structure to it, just by virtue of it being a group of people that get picked off one by one. But there's a lot of fun stuff in there, though. I don't know.
Oh yeah, and look, I'm a sucker for the classic PG rated film that will show some tits as well. It's just that's so missing nowadays. Yeah.
Yeah, in the 70s, you could maybe catch a glimpse.
Yeah. Maybe a little more so in a shot or two. I'm not saying I was like, bouncing through clips here and there, but
Listen, I'm not saying that I was Koeman, okay?
Look, Brooke Adams.
Brooke Adams is a cutie patootie, dude. Oh, that's right. She was in the Dead Zone. I forgot that.
That's right. Yeah.
Speaking of Cronenberg. But I think if you guys have ever seen The Brood, going back to what I was saying about The Brood has a very kind of similar perspective on pop psychology, where it kind of takes it to task in a way, as it's this thing that's trying to subvert like the natural order and brainwashes people. So, yeah, it would actually make a good double feature: Invasion of the Body Snatchers and The Brood. Oddly enough, thematically they match up. Tremling says, "Did you know that Leonard Nimoy did books of photography about mainly naked fat women? Spock loved to go pigging." I guess he'd love OnlyFans. I did know that. Yeah, it's like his coffee table book or whatever. He's he's just like the super famous person. I think he was wealthy. A lot of the time those actors from those shows, these very successful, popular things, actually didn't kind of get fucked over. But I don't think Leonard Nimoy was one of them.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Was that in his Bilbo Baggins song phase or something? Or what was?
No, it was like, I want to say like 2012, something like around that time period.
Okay.
Maybe it was like right around. Oh, maybe it was like right around when the Star Trek 09 came out. And obviously he used that as a promotional vehicle for his book of naked fat women. Trelling says, Brooke Adams and Karen Allen were similar brunette cute girls that we need a return of. Dude, I agree. Also, I want to give a shout out to Art Hindle as Jeffrey. If you guys don't know who he is, he's from Black Christmas. He's the boyfriend.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's right.
Jeffrey, he's the husband. Yeah. He's the husband, yeah.
Yeah.
And he's really good. He's such a creep. I was like, yeah, this is exactly like his performance in Black Christmas.
Yeah, he's probably one of the better examples too of like the pod people like just playing it so measured when they're like talking to the cops and everybody, and just like underrated. He might
just
be
has
the
like
MVP.
He just has he could be the secret MVP. He's got just like a menacing presence. And I don't know if that's because I recognized him from Black Christmas, so I kind of just like grouped them together like that unfairly.
Yeah.
But that's definitely what activated it in my brain. My eyes were like, whoa.
Yeah. But I got to say, my actual MVP, my secret MVP, would probably be Robert Duvall on the swing set. It is such a quick shot, and I had to do like playbacks. I remember like, so my history with this movie is that my theater teacher in high school used to teach film studies, and she had like this huge DVD collection in her office, and she just kind of lent me this movie to borrow and watch, and then we adapt. I told you this, Sean, actually in our chat, but like we adapted this movie for the stage in my class. I think it was 10th grade or something.
Do you have
like
a
that.
tape of this or something?
I wished. It was so much fun, dude.
You got to start calling. Look, Facebook people. Be like, yo, does anybody have a tape of this?
Right. But yeah, I remember the first time I watched it. I think I'd seen The Conversation and something, and maybe one of the Godfathers at that time, and I was thinking like, is that Robert Duvall? Like, what? I had to like play it back so many times. Like,
yeah, I guess they're buddies, and he had been in a movie that Philip Kaufman had directed, and he was just there for the day, and
right.
They're like, yeah, you want to jump in a shot? And he's like, heck yeah,
let's do it. yeah.
Philip Kaufman, he's got some titles here. Yeah. I don't know if I might have seen some of them. I've seen Rising Sun, Sean Connery and Wesley Snipes.
Yeah.
I've seen Henry and June. He did The Unbearable Lightness of Being. The Right Stuff. The Right Stuff's pretty good, if memory serves me correct. The Wanderers. I've never seen The Wanderers. The fuck is that? Oh, is this like the sequel to Rumblefish? No. This takes place in the 50s. Never mind. 1963. It's like a not musical West Side Story. Interesting.
He was supposed to do. I remember there was like a story where Philip Kaufman was supposed to direct The Outlaw Josie Wales with Clint Eastwood.
Yeah,
way back when, which is a movie we did cover with Jerry Jensen, Bloom Online.
That's right.
Years back. But then he got replaced because he was just very difficult to work with, or something of that nature, which I can see with Philip Kaufman. But
can you really? I mean, I was watching the supplemental features on my Blu-ray.
Yeah.
Because, of course, Papa Sean owns it.
There you go.
Actually, Kino Lorber, I think, is putting out like the 56 and 78 and 4K this summer. So you all know. So you're all aware. Don't buy it when it comes out. Wait for a sale. But time is ripe to be into the invasion of the body snatchers, is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Time is now. He seemed like he actually, you know what? Yeah, he seemed like a very like a New York Jew.
Yeah.
For lack of a better way to put it. I'm not trying to be anti-Semitic or anything, so calm down, everybody. But just kind of neurotic and whiny. I guess I could probably see that.
Yeah, I mean, in interviews, he seems like totally fine and very energetic and enthusiastic about what he has to talk about. But just from what other people were saying, like, no, we got to kick this guy out. Okay. In the case of Josie Wales, I think a lot of that was Eastwood. I think he kind of just took over that production.
Yeah, Eastwood was like directing those movies most of the time.
Yeah.
Like he was like Stallone. Stallone was like became that way too, or he became like a nightmare to direct in the 80s, apparently.
Yeah.
At least, Kaufman had the foresight not to film. The studio asked him to film a happy ending.
Yes.
And he said no. And the reason he said no is because he talked to Don Siegel, and Don Siegel said they made me do that shit. Don't let him ruin your picture, Kaufman.
Yeah.
Hold on, I got to go talk to John Wayne. You know how he is.
Yeah. Fight for what you believe in.
Yeah, because this has been around the time he was making The Shootist.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this is the best of the bunch, though, for sure. I think it's got everything. It's got good performances. It's got an interesting twist on the themes of the story itself, while I think staying very true to the story. And it's just a really fun thriller. And I really like the way that the mystery kind of unfolds. Actually, I like that in almost all of the adaptations, like kind of the slow burn of the first hour. I just find it enjoyable because that's how it would be. Yeah. That's how it would be. It would be like these small, weird instances, these notices. You would just notice somebody acting weird. Mm-hmm. And you would be like, what is going on? You know what I mean? And you would think you're kind of crazy. And I like that that's kind of represented in all versions.
Yeah.
Like the kind of the creeping reality.
Sure.
Trembling says Kaufman made Twisted, one of the dozens of Ashley Judd thrillers of the 90s. Man, they loved her at that time. He definitely did. That was one of his last theatrical movies. God bless him. God bless you, Philip Kaufman, wherever you are. He's still alive.
I know we haven't really spoken on it too because we got 2 other movies here as well, but like it also just builds on this whole concept of just you're most vulnerable when you're asleep, you know.
Oh yeah,
that's when everything changes, you know. Like that's
well,
how
it's the whole theme
around.
It's all the whole thing of just like kind of the meta notion of the phrase falling asleep or being asleep, being out of the loop, being out of the know, and somehow being vulnerable, like you said. Yeah, and that's something that holds true. Not really in the 2007 one.
Not as much.
Not as much. It's more of like it's the most aggressive of all of them. In a way. But yeah.
And then there's just so many good scenes to pull from the '78 film. I love when Leonard Nimoy, he's like basically he's injecting Donald Sutherland and Brooke Adams at this point, and like getting them back to their side, turn on them, and like in the moment, they're in such an emotional state where they say like I hate you, and then they just like very calmly admits like, well, we don't hate you, this is part of the process. She's like, and then she turns to Donald Sutherland, and
that's part of your goddamn problem, because that's what I also like, because the pod people agree with somebody like Dr. Kibner.
Yes,
they actually agree with him about like kind of separating yourself from your feelings. Because that's what he's talking about. That's what he's like giving that talk at the party about. That's what he's talking to the woman about with her husband. It's like separate yourself from your emotions.
Yeah. Well, because in a perfect world, if pod people invade Earth, okay, so we don't have love, we don't have hate, but everything's still running okay. Everybody's still getting along, and everybody's in sync, and there's actually no disaster.
There would be no point to life, Jeremy. Life is about the problems that those things cause. That's what life ends up being about. If we didn't have those things, we're just machines. We're just cogs.
Yeah. Yep.
It's fucking deep stuff, dude. I'll tell you what. Gets right to the heart of it when you think about it.
Like a real big brain, watching it the other day. Yeah.
Oh, I love the sequence, the mud bath sequence, like that whole sequence in the mud bath that leads up to Jeff Goldblum being half naked and almost getting replicated. And I actually like that the movie is very clear about the rules, for turning into a pod person, and they don't really cheat. You could maybe say they make a cheat at the end when the girl turns into the pod person a little bit, but they don't cheat, and it becomes part of the plot that it actually is a process. And I thought that was really clever to do that.
Right, because you can sleep for a certain amount of time and then break out of it. That was the interesting
exactly
aspect.
And it adds like a ticking clock to scenes, so it just ratchets up the tension. It's just a clever way to utilize that part of the story, because they built it into the scenes, into the narrative itself. They brought it up to the forefront.
And we'll get into this, I think, with the Invasion 2007 later, but I wonder if the spreading technique of the pods, because I guess they hint that it's in a lot of the floral decoration and a lot of the plants.
Well, they're noticing that there's new foreign plants and flowers like amidst their bouquets and whatnot.
Yeah, and I wonder how easily that spreads, as opposed to in the 2007 version where you just have to be spat on or thrown up on to actually.
Well, the 2007 one, like I said, is much more of like a virus.
Yeah.
It's like it's like COVID. It's like getting the flu or something. It's
right?
Like bird flu, whatever was the issue of the day. I think bird flu was the thing at the time, or maybe mad cow disease. That could have been also around that time as well.
Yeah.
So that is what would have been in the ether. That's what would have been out there in people's minds. So, it kind of makes sense. It makes sense because it makes it much more quick. It's easier. It's, it's more terrifying. It's kind of the most artless way to do it because it's the most direct. It's just like, oh, you got coughed on. Oh, shit. Now you're a pod person.
Yeah.
Now you got it, dude. You got the pod. You got podded, dude. Probed, motherfucker.
No, I would say the Philip Kaufman one takes the approach that's more close to like The Thing or something, where it's just like it's always kind of in the air or exists.
Yeah, because
and it can just
yeah, it's a remake that totally justifies itself. I thought the same thing when I was watching it. I was like, oh, this is kind of reminds me a lot of The Thing, in its quality. Like it took that material, it did a little of it, and it kind of did a little of its own thing, in the way that The Thing does as well. You know. It's the good way to do a remake. It's the right way to do a remake if you're going to. Like, if you don't have anything interesting to say about it, you shouldn't do it. And that's probably, once we start talking more in earnest about the 2007 The Invasion, that's kind of the problem with that movie. Like, it doesn't justify itself. It doesn't feel like it has a reason to exist. It just feels like, here's a movie. Here's some slop out there for your cinemaplexes.
Yeah.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers, you're dying to watch it again. I mean, that's kind of the thinking behind that stuff.
Yeah.
But well, let's move on to the 1993 Body Snatchers, The Invasion Continues, which before I revisited it, I thought in the back of my mind that this was like